Dr. K.S. Ramakrishnan is working as an assistant professor, School of Education, Tamil Nadu Open University, Chennai 15. He has been teaching science education, environmental science, educational technology and research methodology in various colleges of education and Tamil Nadu Open University for the past 9 years. He has guided so many M.Ed, M.Phil and PhD students. His current research areas are environmental education, educational technology and media and communication. He has conducted various workshops on ICT usage in education, Wiki Educator, e-content development and educational research methodology. He had attended many online workshops on Moodle, learning analytics. He has published 6 books and many articles in national and international journals of repute. He regularly gives plenary and keynote speeches on environment and ICT related issues at various national and international conferences. He has delivered 28 episodes of the program Pudiyodor Ulagam at All India Radio, Chennai, related to various new developments in science and technology.
Welcome to UGC lecture series. In this episode of Environmental Education, we shall discuss about the environmental impact of urbanization. So, look at the diagram. It is a city in Argentina and you see the way that it is overcrowded, and in this episode we shall see how this kind of urbanization has impacted the environment. And these are all the topics that we will discuss: the urbanization, the problems of urbanization, the effects of urbanization and the pollution control mechanisms. And these are all the topics that we shall discuss today. And first let us see what is the meaning of urbanization. The transformation of a society from a rural to an urban one. That means the people are moving from a rural background to an urban background, and that transformation is called the urbanization. And it may be followed by the physical movement, or the same place can be converted into an urban area. And the urban population, that means the persons living in cities or towns of 2500 or more residents. And the urbanized area, the places and adjacent densely populated surrounding with minimum population of 50,000, and therefore, if at any place the population is more than 50,000, we shall say that it is an urbanized area. And the mega cities, the cities with 10 million residents or more. See, for example, as far as India is concerned, we have some metros like Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi or Kolkata. All these are some metro cities because the population is more than 10 lakhs. And the metropolitan area is a densely populated core area together with adjacent communities. That means, surrounding a metropolitan area, there is an adjacent community that is called the suburb, and therefore, the core area that is called the metropolitan city. The largest city in each metropolitan is designated as the central city. See, for example, as far as Chennai is concerned, the Chennai has a lot of suburbs like Avadi, Ambattur or Tambaram. Like that, there are so many suburbs, but the main place, that is Chennai city, and therefore, it is called the Chennai metropolitan. And the suburbanization, as more people move to the suburbs, urban areas surrounding the central cities undergo the suburbanization. That means, when a city is formed, it is surrounded with a lot of suburbs also, and therefore, what will happen as the time evolves, the people are migrating, moving from the main city to the suburb, and therefore, the suburb area that is gradually growing, and that process is called the suburbanization. And as city residents leave the city to live in the suburbs, the cities experience deconcentration, the redistribution of the population from cities to suburbs and the surrounding area. That means, initially the people are surrounding in the city area, and surrounding the city area the suburbs are formed, and gradually the people, they are moving from city to suburbs area, and that phenomenon is called the suburbanization. And now, the urbanization and environment the world population growth has an important human environmental interaction. That means, the environment is deeply interacted with by the human beings, and therefore, when a city is formed, naturally that it is affecting the environment also, and therefore, while the world's population doubles, the world's urban population triples, and within the next few years, more than half of the world's population will be living in urban areas, and therefore, it is very difficult to stop the urbanization. The only thing that we can say that how can we protect the environment from the urbanization, and both the increase in and the redistribution of the earth population are likely to affect the natural systems of the earth and the interactions between the urban environments and population, and therefore, there is an interaction between the natural system and the population. And now, let us see how. See, it is a population growth of 10 cities. The gray area, that is 1950, and the white area 1970, and it is 2000, and the light blue, that is 2015. And therefore, as far as Mumbai is concerned, what a phenomenal growth of population, and it was below 5 million, and now it is more than 25 million, and therefore, what a phenomenal growth. And the same thing is happening for most of the cities except London. London, you see, the initial population was more, and gradually that it is decreasing. That means, from the main city, the people have moved to the suburb area. That is the meaning of that particular graph. And therefore, from the graph, it is very much understood that the urbanization has started taking place. And these are all the problems of urbanization. So, when an urban area is evolving, congestion, housing problem, transport, employment, the environmental quality, health, sanitation, education, and crime. So, all these are associated phenomena with the urbanization. See, the urban people change their environment through their consumption. So, they consume more food, energy, water, and land. In turn, the polluted urban environment affects the health and quality of life of the urban people, and therefore, there is a vast difference between the food habits of the rural people and urban people. The urban people are eating very sophisticated processed food rather than the rural people who are eating some raw and unprocessed food, and therefore, they consume more amount of food, energy, water, and land also, and therefore, it is affecting the environment very deeply. See, this diagram is a urban Nigeria. See the way that how congested it is, and this also is urban Nigeria, and therefore, whenever the urbanization happens, the first impact is the congestion. And the urbanization and food, the urban population have different consumption patterns than the residents of rural area, because in rural area very limited food items are available, and therefore, the pattern is very less or narrow, but in urban area they have a very wide pattern. They consume much more food, energy, and durable goods than the rural population. In China, the urban population consumes twice as much pork as rural population who raise the pigs, and therefore, see what an irony it is. The rural population has raised the pigs, but the urban population has consumed it twice as much as the rural population, and therefore, there is a vast difference. As far as India is concerned, many urban residents are vegetarians, and therefore, in urban areas the milk consumption is much more than the rural areas. And now the goods, the urban population consume more durable good, for example, TV. The Chinese urban household own a TV 8 times more likely to have a washing machine, 25 times more likely to have a refrigerator than the rural population. That means, the likelihood of having a TV, refrigerator, and washing machine is much more than that of the rural population. And the energy consumption, electricity, transportation, cooking, and heating is much higher in urban areas, and therefore, the urban population have many more cars than the rural population per capita. In China, the per capita consumption of coal in towns and cities is 3 times that of the rural area, and therefore, in food also, in the good also, in the energy also, in all these ways, the urban population is very much different from the rural population. And now, how the urbanization is affecting the weather. Heat islands become traps for atmospheric pollutants. Cloudiness and fog occur with greater frequency. See, an urban atmosphere is always characterized with fog because a lot of pollution is created, and therefore, all the particulate matter, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and all, and they are floating on the air, and therefore, that is affecting the light penetration, and the resulting is that fog creation is very rampant and very common in the urban areas, and the precipitation 5% to 10% higher in cities. Thunderstorms, hailstorms are much more frequent, but snow days in cities are very less common, and therefore, 5 to 10% more precipitation also is happening in the urban areas. And the energy consumption is creating heat islands that change the local weather patterns and weather downwind, and the cities radiate heat back into the atmosphere at 15 to 30% less than the rural areas. That means, they produce more amount of energy, they consume more amount of energy, and they are radiating less amount of energy, and therefore, what is the result? The temperature that is somewhat less. See, the increased energy consumption and the difference in albedo, the radiation, makes cities warmer than the rural areas, that is 0.6 to 1.3 degree centigrade, and therefore, these cities are generally warmer than the rural backgrounds. Okay, audience, let us have a short break. Welcome back from the break. Let us proceed. See, it is a diagram, the sketch of an urban heat island profile. See, it is a downtown where the city is situated, and the urban residential, park, and the rural farmland. See, here the late afternoon, that means the 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the temperature gradient you see, it is having the peak at the city. That means, the central city, the downtown city is warmer than the rural background. That is called the heat island. And the urban heat island are smoggier, and the smog is created by the photochemical reaction, as we have already seen. These reactions are more likely to occur and intensify at higher temperature. The more temperature it is, the more smog is formed. For every degree Fahrenheit, the temperature rises above 70 degree Fahrenheit, the incidence of smog increased by 3%. Therefore, the more warmer day, the more smog is produced. And now, the water and the urbanization. There is a significant impact on hydrology. Impacts nature of runoff water that flows into rivers, streams or lakes and may carry sediment. See, in city a lot of pollutants are produced, and therefore, when that water is running off into the river, and that river is also polluted, and the rate of soil erosion, that is also affected. The soil erosion, that is more in cities than in the rural area, and the delivery of pollutants to rivers, streams, lakes and ocean. Therefore, in the cities the pollution that is more than that of the rural area, and therefore, it is affecting the hydrology in that way. And look at the diagram, the industrial area, and therefore, that is producing a lot of pollutants, and here it is very cloudy, and therefore, the precipitation is also more, and the soil moisture, the evaporation. So, the city atmosphere that is affected by all these ways, and the same diagram depicted in a different way. And here the discharge, see here, as the time is increasing, so how much discharge that is produced, and the blue area runoff and rainfall, that means the center of mass indicated. Therefore, the runoff area that is less, and the orange that is a completely severed basin with a natural surface, and therefore, the sewage water discharge is more, the runoff is somewhat less, and then comes the red area, completely severed basin with highly impervious surface. Therefore, it is a highly polluted matter, and the green area natural channels and basin surface. Therefore, as far as the cities are concerned, the natural channels are less, rather the completely sewage material that is more, and therefore, it is a pattern for the cities. And therefore, what is the result of this? The urbanization increases the intensity and decreases the lag time for floods. It increases the frequency of small flood. See, for example, some few years ago in Mumbai, there was a flood, and see, in contrast, the flood that was there for so many days, it was not discharged through natural channels, and the size of small floods is increased by urbanization, while during large infrequent floods, there are no significant difference between the way the rural and urban areas behave. And the erosion, the runoff on bare land leads to erosion. The grass, trees and other plants hold the soil in place and avoid erosion. The highest rate of erosion are produced in urban areas during the construction, and the erosion is the source of sediment that fills streams, and it pollutes water, kills aquatic life, and shortens the useful life of dams and reservoirs. And therefore, the erosion also is more in cities. And these are all the some places of worship in cities, and here is the sewage, and so how much polluted it is that you can imagine. And the nutrient loading in urban areas, and see, it is a pond in the urban, and therefore, the pond, it is loaded with more nutrients of nitrogen, sulfur, etc., and therefore, you see the growth of algae, and that is more, and therefore, the whole pond that is dead, and it is increasing the metal poisoning. Actually, in the diagram that you are seeing the arsenic poisoning, and therefore, see the how much that it is affecting the legs and the hands of the people, and therefore, the metal poisoning is much more in the cities. And in health aspect also, inadequate water and sanitation, lack of rubbish disposal, so it is resulting in the respiratory infections and other infectious and parasitic diseases. And as the cost of building is more, it is difficult to build the cleaner public transportation system and hospitals and clinics, and therefore, it is not possible to build very high quality clinics and all, and it is possible, but they are very costly, and therefore, all the people who are living in cities, they cannot afford for the high cost medical facilities, and therefore, resulting is that the health profile of the people in cities, they are little bit less than those in the rural areas. And the water pollution, there are point sources and non-point sources, and the pollution includes the chemicals, sediments, heat, disease causing organisms, and therefore, in the water pollution count also the cities are lagging behind the rural areas. And here is sedimentation, and therefore, the sediment is more in the city areas. And the water pollution, the suspended solid, the coliform bacteria is more the chlorides, the phosphorus and nitrogen, all these are polluting the water areas in the cities, and therefore, the biochemical oxygen demand BOD, that is also less, and the dissolved oxygen in water, that is decreasing, and therefore, what will happen? The aqua ecosystem, that is highly affected. See, for example, if you look at the pond that you could have seen, in this pond, as the sunlight cannot enter and the oxygen also cannot dissolve, so what will happen? All the fishes and all, they will perish in a short time, and that is a problem of the water ecosystem. The biochemical oxygen demand, that is less, and therefore, the water bodies or the water animals, they cannot survive. And see, look at the diagram, actually it is affected by the algae. That means that because of the over nutrients, it has lost all the properties, and therefore, no animal beings can survive in this pond. And now, we have come to the last lap of the episode. How shall we control pollution? Okay, that a lot of pollution is there, but how shall we control pollution? What is the responsibility of the people and what is the responsibility of the government? See, the production of goods. So, the goods are produced and the cost of the production, that is taken or that is put on the consumer. But the recent philosophy is that when the goods are produced, they are polluting the environment also, and therefore, the cost of the environmental pollution, that also has to be added with the cost of the good, and therefore, the consumer has to bear the cost of the environmental pollution also. So far, this phenomena was not in practice, but nowadays, for every carbon count, they have to pay the tax for the carbon count also, because there is no material or goods which can be produced without polluting the nearby surrounding, and therefore, when the good is produced at a particular place and it is sold at some other place, why for that person, the persons who are living in the nearby areas, they have to suffer, and therefore, it is a recent phenomena, and therefore, the consumer as well as the taxpayer, they have to pay the tax or they have to compensate for the environmental pollution, and through the environmental tax, the pollution can be mitigated. So, that is a recent phenomena, and so what is the advantage? The cleaning environment can be maintained and the health problems can be reduced also, because who will pay for the people affected by the pollution? Because that people are very poor, and therefore, somehow or other only the governments have to take responsibility. Governments and the corporate sector and the public at large, we have to take the responsibility for providing the health aspect of those who are affected by the pollution. And what are the mechanisms? The free market transactions are usually unregulated. See, even though there are so many mechanisms like GATT and other GATT and GATS, and there are so many other mechanisms are in theory, but in practice they are very less practiced, and therefore, the free market transaction, the best example is the Union Carbide. The Union Carbide is a United States company, and it has polluted the city of Bhopal, where some around 30,000 people were killed and so many lakhs of people were affected by the methyl isocyanate pollutant, and therefore, all these problems are created because of the unregulated market economy. If the market economy is not regulated, definitely that it will affect the people in a serious way. There is no mechanism for charging the polluters a fee to correct for the damage done by their emissions. So, for example, if a company like Nokia or Hyundai, they are polluting a particular place, what is the wrong in charging a pay or charging a fee? so that that amount can be utilized. There is a generally there is a concern that the water level in nearby areas of Hyundai has come down, and therefore, that may be rectified by utilizing the tax to correct the damage done by their emission, and therefore, the society decides on an acceptable level of environmental quality and the government has to intervene. The free market economy will not work out as far as the pollution is concerned, and therefore, the government has to intervene. And the government intervention, the same diagram, the industrial production and the reduced environmental emission and the cost of production is falling on the consumer, and the consumer is paying the affected people by the tax incentive. Suppose in case if they are reducing the pollution, then we may give the tax incentive or the credit also. So, somehow that we can give some relaxation. So, some cities which are most urbanized, New York, Los Angeles, Mexico City, and in India also Hyderabad, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, Karachi, Lahore, and therefore, all these places the people, that is above 10 million people are living, and therefore, the Indian cities are overcrowded. Not only India, most of the Asian cities are overcrowded in comparison with the cities in United States. And now, let us summarize. In this episode, we have discussed about the urbanization, what are the problems of urbanization, the effects of urbanization, and the pollution control mechanisms, all that have been discussed in detail. And now, let us have some questions. The first question, define the urbanization and suburbanization. The second one, mention some problems of urbanization. The third, how urbanization affect the weather. The fourth, define heat islands. And the fifth one, discuss some measures to control pollution. So far, we have discussed about the urbanization and what are the problems associated with urbanization. The same problems are existing in any urban place. For example, you take Tripur. Tripur is called the Banyan City or the Dollar City, and there on one side that we are developing a lot of revenue for the country, on the same other side the rivers are highly polluted, and therefore, the companies which are earning the money, they have to take responsibility for cleaning the canals and the rivers which are surrounding the Tripur city. And therefore, dear audience, that you look at your urban cities and see in what ways they are polluted, and you think of how shall we as people, consumer, producer and the public at large, we shall remediate the pollution. Thank you. Have a nice day.